Peace, I am Uncle Ivan. Today, we're discussing a very important topic, especially in this era full of suffering. The recent Type fire incident has plunged the entire society into grief. Many people rush to comfort victims' families and friends with words like "be strong" or "everything will be okay." But have you noticed that sometimes these seemingly well-intentioned encouragements make the hurt people feel even worse? Today, we're exploring a psychological concept called toxic positivity. This concept comes from American clinical psychologist Whitney Goodman's book Toxic Positivity. Let's understand together why our good intentions can sometimes cause harm and how we should truly support those suffering around us. First, let me introduce psychologist Whitney Goodman. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist running a private practice in Miami with a large social media following. Her research and clinical work reveal a dangerous cultural phenomenon in modern society: compulsive positive thinking. So, what is toxic positivity? It refers to requiring people facing setbacks or trauma to immediately show optimism and take positive action. Superficially encouraging, it actually blocks natural emotional flow, denying empathy opportunities. This results in more anxiety and shame, even deterring help-seeking. Per Goodman's research, toxic positivity has three core issues. First, when positivity becomes a duty rather than a choice, negative emotions are suppressed. Pain is repressed and denied, creating shame. Psychological studies show emotional suppression doesn't eliminate negativity but increases physiological and psychological stress. Second, we must recognize negative emotions as necessary. Sadness, anger, fear are normal signals indicating issues needing attention and processing. They should be understood and accepted, not forcibly suppressed. Trauma experts find post-trauma responses are natural adaptations; suppressing them prolongs recovery. Third, true support isn't rushing to urge forward-looking. It's companionship and acceptance, respecting the person's pace for steady growth and healing. Like the Bible says, weep with those who weep, not rush to stop their crying. Now, let's look at 8 most common toxic positivity statements. You might have heard or said them yourself. I'll explain one by one why these words, though well-intentioned, can cause harm. The first is don't cling to it. If you want to let go, you can. This implies pain is your choice, stoppable anytime if willing. But psychological research tells us emotional processing takes time, not a simple switch. The second is you should be grateful, others have it worse. This is typical pain comparison. Studies show it doesn't reduce pain but adds shame, making people feel unqualified to suffer or too weak. The third is the person is dead, pain is useless. This completely denies the necessity of grieving. Grief psychology research clearly states mourning is an essential stage in healthy emotional processing, not skippable or shortenable. When Lazarus died, the Bible records Jesus wept. Even Jesus mourned his friend's death. How can we demand others not grieve? The fourth is my condolences, be positive and look forward. Urging others forward ignores that current pain needs full experience and processing. Emotional validation research shows only after emotions are fully acknowledged and accepted can people truly move on. Rushing to look ahead is like making someone run while their wound still bleeds unreasonable. The fifth is all pain comes from being too attached. This blames pain on personal mindset, ignoring the trauma event's severity and complexity. It's like saying if you're hit by a car and hurt, it's because you're attached to not hurting. The sixth is pain is just an illusion. Change your mind and be happy. Cognitive psychology supports cognitive restructuring's value, but it must build on full emotional validation. Forced reframing causes emotional suppression, like putting a band-aid on a wound without cleaning it first. The seventh is everything is actually God's best arrangement. For those in pain, this may feel like saying their suffering should happen, deepening powerlessness. The Bible teaches God has plans, But that doesn't mean denying current pain and grief. The eighth is life is so beautiful, don't overthink. This utterly denies the person's real feelings, implying their pain is overblown. Telling someone suffering that life is beautiful is like telling a drowning person the weather is nice inappropriate. Now, let's delve deeper into the harms caused by toxic positivity. These harms are not just psychological but also physiological and relational. First, the psychological harms. According to Stanford University's emotion regulation expert Professor James Gross's research, emotional suppression leads to multiple issues. It increases anxiety and depression symptoms, lowers self-esteem and self-worth, generates shame and isolation, and hinders genuine emotional processing and healing. Studies find that people who habitually suppress emotions long-term experience higher negative emotions, lower positive emotions, poorer social adaptation, and decreased overall well-being. The physiological harms are not to be ignored. Research on the physiology of emotional suppression shows it increases sympathetic nervous system activity, i.e., stress responses. It raises cardiovascular disease risk, weakens immune function, increases chronic pain and various psychosomatic symptoms. Some studies even find that those suppressing emotions are more susceptible to illnesses from common colds to cancer. More severely, toxic positivity can cause so-called secondary trauma. Imagine someone already traumatized, yet required to think positively and be strong. What would they feel? They'd sense their pain isn't acknowledged, feel inadequate or not strong enough, believe they can't express true vulnerability, and must wear an "I'm fine" mask. This state may lead to smiling depression, appearing actively optimistic on the surface but extremely pained inside. This is very dangerous, as others can't see the suffering and won't provide proper support. Toxic positivity also severely impacts interpersonal relationships. Research finds that when someone suppresses emotions in social interactions, both parties feel more anxiety and negative emotions, with reduced connection, weakened trust, and superficial communication. This is because emotions play a key communicative role in social interactions, providing important information about the other's thoughts, intentions, and traits. When emotions are suppressed, this vital communication channel is cut off. Before continuing to discuss how to provide effective support, let's look at how the Bible views emotions. The Bible never requires us to deny our emotions. On the contrary, it's full of examples of emotional authenticity. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 4 says, "A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance." This verse tells us life has different seasons, times for crying and times for laughing. God created us with various emotions, each with its meaning and timing. The Psalms are the best example. King David unreservedly expresses his fear, anger, despair, and loneliness in the Psalms. Psalm 34 verse 18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." God doesn't want us to pretend to be strong but draws near when we're heartbroken. The most touching is John 11 verse 35, just 4 words, Jesus wept. When Lazarus died, Jesus knew he would raise him, yet he still wept for his friend's death and the family's grief. This tells us grief has value, even knowing resurrection and hope await, current sorrow is real and needs experiencing. Romans 12 verse 15, "Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn." This isn't about giving advice or urging forward, it's simply being with them. When others weep, our duty isn't to stop their crying but to accompany them in weeping. So, when people around us face difficulties, how should we provide truly effective support? Let me share 3 important principles. The first principle is to acknowledge and catch the other's emotions. Don't say "think positively, let go," but say "I feel your pain." You can share slowly, "Okay? I'm here with you." Psychologists point out that emotional validation includes 6 levels. First is attentive listening, showing genuine interest. Second is accurate reflection, mirroring the other's emotional state. Third is understanding context, grasping the background of the emotions. Fourth is acknowledging validity, confirming the emotional response is reasonable. Fifth is normalizing, letting the person know these feelings are normal. Sixth is genuine empathy, showing real understanding and care. This approach provides healthy outlets for emotions rather than suppressing them. Research shows such validating responses effectively reduce emotional agitation, increase trust, improve interpersonal connections, and help individuals develop self-validation abilities. The second principle is to use questions instead of advice. Don't say you should do this, but ask, what do you need most now? What's the hardest part for you this time? How can I support you? These open-ended questions allow the person to gradually settle their thoughts, slowly sort complex emotions, and find their own rhythm, rather than being forced to accept other solutions or pretend positivity. Trauma treatment research shows that giving the person a sense of control and autonomy is a key factor in the recovery process. The third principle is to appreciate the person's efforts. Don't say it's no big deal, but say you're suffering yourself yet still choose to help others. That's truly rare. I appreciate your effort and kindness. This specific, emotion-linked appreciation affirms the person's value, acknowledges their efforts, and provides real emotional support. Sometimes, the best support is simply companionship without any words. Like Job's friends, who initially sat beside him for 7 days and nights without speaking a word, because they thought his suffering was great. That 7-day companionship might have been the best comfort. Later, when they started preaching, it made Job even more pained. Besides learning how to support others, we also need to learn how to care for our own emotions. Here, I want to clarify an important distinction: the difference between emotional suppression and emotional regulation. Emotional suppression is attempting to deny or eliminate the existence of emotions, like pretending you're not angry or sad. But emotional regulation is acknowledging the emotion, understanding its message, and then choosing how to respond. These are completely different things. Research shows that healthy emotional regulation strategies include cognitive reappraisal and mindful acceptance. Cognitive reappraisal isn't ignoring negative emotions, but, after fully feeling them, reinterpreting the situation's meaning. This strategy helps us find new perspectives without suppressing emotions. Research on mindful acceptance shows that accepting one's emotions, including negative ones, can actually reduce emotional distress, lower physiological stress responses, and improve overall mental health. Mindfulness expert John Kabat-Zinn says, mindfulness allows us to connect with our inner self, validate our experiences, and reduce dependence on external approval. Trauma treatment experts suggest learning to identify and name our emotional states. This is the first step in self-validation. Sometimes we may not know exactly what we're feeling, but we can start from a general direction. For example, I might not know if I'm tense or anxious, but I know I feel some unease. Giving it a rough name is the first step in starting to understand ourselves. In practice, we need to give ourselves time and space to feel emotions without rushing to fix them. If emotional suppression has severely affected life, please seek psychological counseling or therapy. Build connections with people who can truly listen and validate your emotions. Be gentle and understanding toward your own emotional responses, as you would with a good friend. Also, regular exercise, balanced diet, and adequate sleep, these basic self-care practices can support emotional health. As Christians, we especially need to be careful not to package toxic positivity in spiritual language. We might say, God is in control, so don't worry, rejoice always, or the joy of the Lord is your strength. These are biblical truths, but if used to deny others' current pain, they become toxic positivity. Paul in Philippians 4 verse 4 says, "Rejoice in the Lord always," but remember, he wrote this from prison. He wasn't denying his plight but acknowledged the difficulty while choosing to trust God. This differs completely from toxic positivity. When saying God has his plan mean even in this pain, God is still present, not so you shouldn't feel pain. When saying have faith, mean God will walk with you through this hard path, not if you have faith, you won't suffer. The church should be a place for authentic emotional expression, crying, and weakness. If our church culture only allows witnessing miracles, sharing grace, and displaying faith, but not admitting weakness, expressing pain, or questioning God, we've created a toxic positivity faith environment. Remember, Jesus in Gethsemane prayed, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death." If even Jesus could express his pain and struggle to the Father, why pretend everything is fine? Finally, let's look at the phenomenon of toxic positivity from a broader perspective. This is not just a personal issue, but a social and cultural phenomenon. Modern society is filled with positive energy culture. Social media is full of displays of perfect lives, as if everyone is living wonderfully and happily. The cultural pressure of good vibes makes people afraid to show their true selves. Successology and positive psychology are misused, with stereotypes viewing emotions as weakness everywhere. This culture makes people fear showing vulnerability, seeing negative emotions as failure, afraid to seek help, feeling isolated and helpless. Research points out that emotions play important roles at personal and social levels. They guide our decisions and actions, help us build relationships and friendships, assist in navigating life's complex challenges, and shape our identity and moral judgments. To change the toxic positivity culture, we need to start with education and awareness raising, letting more people understand the importance of emotional validation. Workplaces need reform. Companies and organizations should create environments allowing authentic emotional expression. Medical and social services need to train professionals in trauma-informed care methods. Communities need support systems, like the Post-Disaster Mental Reconstruction Community Soul Companions program initiated by Dr. Chao Ashan. This program trains community members to become emotional supporters, not giving advice or solutions, but simply accompanying and listening. This is exactly what our society needs, an environment where we can truly face emotions and support each other. Let me summarize today's sharing with one core message. True comfort isn't urging positivity, but weeping and walking alongside others. Whitney Goodman in The Toxic Positivity reminds us that rather than always demanding ourselves to be sunny and bright, it's better to allow ourselves to show vulnerability. True healing and growth don't come from forcing positive thinking, but from acknowledging the real existence of pain, giving space for emotions to flow, and slowly recovering through understanding and companionship. When we no longer fear vulnerability or rush to demand positivity, when we allow pain to be seen and suffering to be empathized with, the connections between people become more real, and society has space to solidly repair and grow. The Bible's hope isn't denying pain, but seeing God's presence in pain. Psalm 23 says, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." Note, this isn't saying because of God, there won't be a valley, but even in the valley, God is with me. This is true hope. Not pretending everything is fine, not rushing to look ahead, but in the deepest darkness, knowing we are not alone. Remember these key points. Your pain is real, your emotions are valid, you deserve understanding and support, healing takes time, no need to rush to get better. Most importantly, God weeps with those who weep. He never requires us to pretend to be strong. If you have questions about today's information or other content and want to learn more, feel free to leave a comment below. Thank you for your support. I hope you'll subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this to help the channel continue and learn more. You can also check out my Patreon. Let's get to know God together, reflect on faith, and live out Christ.